Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, ranking the position groups for this Oklahoma program heading into 2024. And, I think my biggest takeaway from doing this practice, you got to give so much credit to Brent Venables, this Oklahoma program going out using the transfer portal to, really fill a lot of cracks in this Oklahoma roster heading into 2024, where you start going down the list of position groups and say, we don't have that many holes, not many questions about this roster heading into 2024. I think Brent Venables has played the game brilliantly. Like, he's built the bulk of this Oklahoma roster from the high school ranks, but has used the transfer portal very methodically in addressing the biggest concerns for this Oklahoma roster. And as a result, you have a depth chart, a roster that I think checks a lot of boxes heading into 2024, fired up to get into my position rankings. Before we do, and as always, one massive shout out to the Sooner fans, whether we're talking 2024, the recruiting trail, the transfer portal. You guys continue to show a ton of love to the boys. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, there are so many different ways that you could go about stacking these position groups. I would love to hear your rankings in the comment section. I got some hot takes in here. I would love to hear what you guys are thinking about some of these hot takes. And without further ado, let's get into my number one position group. That's the defensive line. And you look at Brent Venables and what he's done since he stepped foot leading this Oklahoma program. It's been building the trenches. Like, look, the SEC did not sneak up on Brent Venables. He knows the recipe in order to compete at the SEC at the highest level, because he beat a lot of these SEC programs during his time at Clemson. The recipe is being competitive along the line of scrimmage. And you look at what he's done, whether it's through the transfer portal, the high school ranks, this defensive line is going to be one of the better units in the SEC in 2024. And at least in my mind, it starts on the inside. You look at the recipe for Brent Venables on the defensive side of the football, going back to his time at Clemson, it is stop the run on first and second down, get after the passer on third down. You look at the inside of this defensive line, DeJohn Terry, Dominic Williams, does it get better in terms of stopping the run than guys like DeJohn Terry and Dominic Williams? My answer is no. And I think you look at what does the third and long pass rush situation look like. You're bringing Caden Woolard from the MAC. Ethan Downs has been a staple, a guy that maybe didn't take the step that we thought he would take in year three, but still an excellent, excellent edge rusher that can create a lot of disruption. I think what I'm most fascinated about is our Mason Thomas staying healthy, PJ Adibari going into year three. There is some big-time juice from the pass rushers on this Oklahoma defensive line. They're going to stop the run on first and second down. It is hard not to with guys like DeJohn Terry, Dominic Williams. Then you start looking at some of the edge rushers. You sprinkle in a guy like David Stone, who is just kind of different on the inside of the defensive line. I think this Oklahoma defensive front has NFL talent. You combine that with depth, they go 2 to 3 deep. I think this is the best position group on this Oklahoma roster. Going to number 2 in, a position group that I think is just so criminally underrated across the country. That's the wide receiver spot. And I think it starts with Deion Burks getting criminally disrespected as a wide receiver one for Oklahoma. You take a look at the EA Sports college football rankings, Deion Burks not inside the top 100. I think a lot of Oklahoma fans are sitting there and saying, Deion Burks is going to go for over 1,000 yards within this Oklahoma offense. There are just so many different ways Deion Burks can get involved in this offense, right? Whether it is working after the catch, whether it's creating separation all over his route trees, whether it's working vertically down the field. I think they have a difference maker in Deion Burks, who's going to be that wide receiver one. Now, what separates this pass catching group from a lot of other wide receiver and tight end groups that you see in the country, the diverse skill sets in terms of throughout this wide receiver room. I think they got multiple guys that can go over 500, 700 yards in 2024. There's just a lot of different guys that can do a lot of different things, right? You look at a guy like Nick Anderson, not a lot of defensive backs can just deal with the physicality and what he can do at the catch point, working vertically like Nick Anderson can. You look at Andrew Anthony coming back from the injury, as polished as it gets in terms of route running, sitting it down in zone coverage. You have some burners in Jaquez Petaway, Brennan Thompson. Jaleel Farouk maybe is one of the most talented wide receivers on this Oklahoma roster who, struggled with some consistency during his junior year. we go back to the sophomore year, this was a difference maker for Oklahoma, a guy that can be somebody that goes for over 700, 800 yards in this Oklahoma offense. It's not just Deion Burks. It's how deep this Oklahoma pass catcher room is and how many different skill sets that they have in this room as well. And then you sprinkle in the tight end position. That's probably the position that's most improved from 2023, where it was, I'm not going to say dreadful, but it wasn't good in 2023. You bring in Bauer Sharp, who is just gifted from an athletic standpoint. You're bringing Jake Roberts that just gives you that higher floor in the tight end room. You sprinkle in someone like Devon Mitchell. I think this tight end room is going to be massively increased from what we saw in 2023. This pass catcher room for Oklahoma, in my mind, it's no joke. Now, going to the number 3 position group, and that's the linebacker spot. You look at this linebacker room last year, Danny Stutzman, I've been very vocal. Danny Stutzman has been one of the best linebackers in the country in 2023. You look at him going into 2024, he's going to be one of the best linebackers that we see in the conference in 2024. I think the question for Oklahoma fans is, what's that linebacker to? Who's his running mate going to be? It wasn't great last year, right? Jaren Kanak, I don't think, had the sophomore year that a lot of us expected of him. My argument with this linebacker room is, you got a guy in Danny Stutzman. I feel really good about Kip Lewis, Lewis Carter, Kobe McKenzie, or Jaren Kanak finding their stride in 2023 or 2024. At least in my mind, it's a numbers game. All 4 of those linebackers have a lot of physical traits to work with. They're all going into either year 2 or year 3 respectively. It's a numbers game. Like, some of these linebackers are going to find their stride in 2024. I don't necessarily know who it's going to be. My personal pick is Kip Lewis. You feel really good about who's going to be the running mate for Danny Stutzman. You got a bunch of hyper athletic linebackers that can do a lot of different things. It's hard to see that linebacker too not being a really good football player in 2024, because there are so many good options that Oklahoma has. Zach Alley coming in, working with Brent Venables. You kind of just trust that this linebacker room is going to be a solid unit in 2024. And on top of that, they're working behind a defensive line that's going to keep them clean. You look at the best friend for a linebacker is having a good defensive line that's winning at the point of attack, allowing linebackers to funnel downhill. These linebackers are going to have that. I think this front 7 for Oklahoma is very, very good for the Sooners in 2024. Going to number 4, and I think this just kind of highlights this Oklahoma team checking so many boxes. I think you have the best safety duo in the country with Billy Bowman Jr., Peyton Bowen, or at least one of the best safety duos in the country. And they're coming in at number 4. You have 2 really reliable cornerbacks in Gentry Williams and Woody Washington. When those 2 are healthy, they're very, very good football players. You have some young talent that is kind of pushing some of those veterans, some of those guys that have played a lot. And then you look at the safety room, and we've talked about this a lot. One of the things I'm most excited for is you go back to the Jacksonville State film of Zach Alley. We did a film breakdown of that when Zach Alley got the job. Zach Alley is going to put these safeties in a lot of different positions to make a lot of plays. And man, does he have a loaded safety group filled with playmakers, right? Obviously starts with Billy Bowman Jr., I think was number 3 in the country in interceptions last year. You have Peyton Bowen going into year 2, but then you start sprinkling in other guys, Spears Jennings, Kendall Doby. I look at this secondary room and say this is perfectly constructed for Zach Alley to get a really aggressive with some of these safeties in the 2024 year. And again, this position group coming in at number 4, it's wild because I think it's a really good group, but I think it just tells you how good this Oklahoma roster is heading into 2024, going to number 5. And I'm just going to put my flagpole on the ground. I originally had the quarterback spot at number 4 with the secondary at 5, and I said, you probably can't do that because I think you're a little bit more proven in the secondary. We're in the middle of July. It's time to make some bold predictions. Jackson Arnold is going to be one of mine. I think a lot of people across the country who might not follow the recruiting trail don't know who Jackson Arnold is. Come mid-October, they're going to know who this kid is. I think Jackson Arnold raises the floor of this Oklahoma offense. We've talked about it extensively. Dillon Gabriel, very, very good collegiate quarterback. There's a reason he's a 6-year quarterback. He doesn't really have the NFL arm talent. He's going to put up some real numbers at Oregon. There's no question marks about that. Jackson Arnold allows this offense to do a little bit more in terms of what kind of throws they're going to ask him to make. And you even go back to the Arizona film. I think a lot of Oklahoma fans were unjustly on top of Jackson Arnold. Yes, he made some true freshman mistakes because he was a true freshman. There were some throws that made your jaw drop a little bit. I think hitting Brennan Thompson on that deep ball right early third quarter, that kind of shows you what Jackson Arnold brings to the table. He made some true freshman mistakes. That offensive line certainly wasn't good enough. You saw him elevate this Oklahoma offense in a meaningful way. They're going to be able to ask Jackson Arnold to do some things that they just couldn't ask Dillon Gabriel to do. I'm a believer in Jackson Arnold. I think he has the talent around him to be very successful in 2024. You talk about some of the better quarterbacks in the SEC conference. I think Jackson Arnold is going to assert himself in that conversation come middle of October. Number 6, the running back room. So you scroll up and look at the running back room. And I'm a huge Gavin Sawchuk fan. And I think the Oklahoma fans who've been rocking with the fellas for the last couple of weeks and months certainly know that. The reason I have him at number 6 is, one, where are you going to put him over? I mean, we just listed a lot of really good position groups. But number 2, you maybe have some question marks about the depth. Right? Javante Barnes, a guy that we were all really high on as a true freshman, just haven't really seen a ton of him in the 2023 season. Caleb Hicks generating a lot of buzz. You're bringing 5-star Taylor Tatum, Sam Franklin from the transfer portal. There are some guys that we feel pretty good about, but in terms of proving commodities in the running back room after Gavin Sawchuk, there are probably some questions. Now, those questions have answers on this Oklahoma roster, but sitting here in the middle of July, I'm going to put running backs at number 6 just because I think you have some question marks about the running back 2, running back 3, running back 4 in this Oklahoma offense. Going to my last position group, and I got to give Brent Venables a ton of credit. We started at the top saying Brent Venables did a massive job in the transfer portal addressing this team's needs. The biggest need we had, we identified this early January, was this Oklahoma offensive line heading into the SEC. What did they go out and do? Just a ton of veteran talent. Now, what excites you the most? Jake Taylor, Jacob Sexton. I think those two are NFL caliber guys, and it sounds like they're starting to hit their stride, but you filled this room with Michael Tarquin. Played a lot of football, not only in the Pac-12 for USC, but going back to his time at the Florida Gators. And I'd say this about Tarquin. Michael Tarquin played solid football in the SEC for Florida. I don't really know what happened when he went out to USC. Obviously didn't live up to those expectations. Can you get back to Michael Tarquin that we saw for the Florida Gators? I think that's a quality tackle. Spencer Brown played some solid football for Michigan State over the last 2 years in the Big Ten, where you see a lot of good line of scrimmage play. Fabici Nuewu, coming from the Group of 5, and Branson Hickman, both have played a lot of football and have played at a very high level. You injected what? That's 4 guys that have played a ton of football in the transfer portal. I'd probably throw in Gary and Hatchett. So 5 guys that have kind of shown that they're proven commodities on the offensive line. Then you sprinkle in some of the young guys, Heath, Joshua Bakes, true freshman Eugene Brooks. You talk about who could start for this Oklahoma team. I think Eugene Brooks could be a guy that emerges as a part of that starting rotation at some point during 2024. There's just enough bodies that you kind of feel good that Coach Bill B is going to get a quality offensive line out there in the 2024 season. Right now, it's a lot of projection, especially going into the SEC. That's why I have him coming in dead last at number 7. We feel a lot better about this offensive line going into 2024 than we did in January. I think Brent Venables did a phenomenal job in the transfer portal, addressing a position that is awfully hard to address in the transfer portal, which is the offensive line. It's a complete roster. And if you get solid offensive line play, you get Jackson Arnold living up to what we all know he can be. This is an Oklahoma team that's going to compete at the top of the SEC. I am excited about this program. I think a lot of people are doubting what Oklahoma can do stepping year 1 into SEC. I think this team's going to be awfully dangerous. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.